This is where it is headed. I have not been wrong so far, so heed my warnings. A lot of people are still kind of oblivious to the grand scheme here, the larger goals of this administration. There's a lot to talk about. Obviously, we're going to start off with the Supreme Court of the United States, which once again came out with a decision, this time 7-2, not unanimous, because, you know, that's also concerning in and of itself, demanding the halting of deportations of Venezuelan migrants in Texas. Now, will the Trump administration follow through on this order? What the language looks like within the order? These are things that matter. Now, the reason why I say that is because the previous unanimous decision, the Trump administration used as an opportunity to test the waters of I guess, legalese, saying, well, these guys did not want effectuation, they want facilitation. And if the demand from the Supreme Court is facilitation, we can kind of start the process of facilitation without actually facilitating the return of anyone that is falsely deported. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But let's take a look for this new decision, and I'll talk about the old decisions as well.
Overnight in the immigration battle, the Supreme Court acting on an emergency appeal from the ACLU involving potential new deportation efforts. Our senior White House correspondent, Selena Wang, is live for us in Washington with the latest now. Good morning, Selena.
Hey, good morning, Gio. The Trump administration's battle with the courts is rapidly escalating. The Supreme Court is again weighing in on their deportation plans as Senator Chris Van Hollen fights for the release of a man who was mistakenly deported to that notorious prison in El Salvador.
Overnight, in a temporary move, the Supreme Court blocking the deportation of Venezuelan migrants held in Texas under the Alien Enemies Act, a centuries-old law that provides little to no due process. The court ruling on an emergency appeal from the ACLU, directing the administration to pause the deportations until further order of this court. The ACLU saying they're relieved and that these men were in imminent danger of spending their lives in a horrific foreign prison without ever having had the chance to go to court. This comes amid the showdown over Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a migrant who was mistakenly deported to the infamous Secot prison in El Salvador. Senator Chris Van Hollen arriving back in the U.S., recounting their face-to-face meeting.
He was traumatized by being at Secot and fearful of many of the prisoners in other cell blocks.
Van Hollen says Salvadoran officials gave...
Dude, the stuff that the right-wing administration and right-wing influencers have been doing surrounding the story unironically resembles like the stirring and the smear, the smear campaigns that like online lolcows engage in. It is kind of wild experiencing that as someone who both covers the news and has a more professional understanding of critical media analysis, and as someone who also routinely is the target of this like bottom of the barrel type like smear campaigns that initially were focused on, I don't know, random dark corners of the internet, like anonymous forums like on 4chan or the doxing forum, which I will not name. And now because of Twitter, because of the Twitter purchase by Elon Musk and the 4chanification of Twitter, that has totally made the American government behave in the exact same way. There are photoshopped images, for example. It's kind of crazy that the Nayib Bukele administration in El Salvador and the MAGA movement across the board is engaging in some of the craziest ways to just lie actively. This is the hand of the man that the Democrats should feel should be brought back to the United States because he's such a fine and innocent person. They said he's not a member of MS-13, even though he's got MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles. And two highly respected courts found that he was a member of MS-13, beat up his wife, etc. I was elected to take bad people out of the United States, among other things. I must be allowed to do my job, make America great again. This right here is so insane because, like, this is the worst, the fakest, most ridiculous Photoshop I have ever seen. I think they're trying to not say his fingers have MS-13 on it. They're trying to say that these images correspond to MS-13. Okay. But what's interesting about this is I don't even know if he has these finger tattoos. That's number one. And number two, they were so not MS-13 that not a single one of these tattoos were dinged initially. Not a single one of these tattoos was initially brought up in the first police report or the subsequent deportation reports. Because ICE fills a report to be like, these are the tattoos that we found on them to consider to be MS-13. And it's also wild because, this is New York Post runs an article suggesting the tattoos of Obrego's hands are a sign of MS-13 affiliation, using a tweet from Captive Dreamer, an actual Nazi, as a source. This is Jesse Singal criticizing it. Libs are even freaking out about this. Right-wing liberals are freaking the out about this. Bill Kristol is writing about how insane this is. Like, in the previous Trump administration, you had liberals be like, we got to abolish ICE. Second Trump administration, you have liberals writing articles about high-profile politicians, and you have Bill Kristol talking about the abolition of ICE. I don't know where we go from here, but I am at least a little bit glad that, like, even the most right-wing neocon reactionary freaks that still have some semblance of, like, institutions and the defense of institutions are recognizing that there is a need for change. This doesn't mean that all of these guys are genuine. This does not mean that these people are your allies right now, or they will remain your allies. But the reality of the matter is, I think there is a change in the overall vibes and the overall attitudes from the American public. I'm hearing, like, the very fact that, I can't wait till it happens, or someone should do it. Like, statements like that, vague statements like that, are being pushed out openly on the timeline by liberals. Okay. These are not like radical extremist. These are not radical extremist leftists saying this kind of stuff. It's actually your moms and your dads. It's like accountants, nurses, teachers, people that you would never expect to say things like this. It is truly a wild time. And I think that the Democratic Party, of course, is not seizing on the moment and the anger and resentment, but I will say this has been my greatest moment of vindication, for the record. As Waifu Jennifer Mao says, you were saying a few weeks ago that normies don't know about the deportation regime. Has the Kilmar case changed that? Yes. What did I tell you? This is not even just like my moment of vindication for the past year. This is my moment of vindication for the past decade. I always have stressed the importance of Democratic politicians actively making a bigger deal about some of the awful things that the Trump administration or any administration is doing about migrants will inevitably cause media coverage around the atrocities, and that will inevitably cause the American public to very quickly turn around and go, this is unacceptable. I've been saying this for years. I said this in the Biden administration, in the beginning of the Biden administration, where I openly stated early on, April or February of 2021, when the Biden administration was using Customs and Border Patrol to, whip Haitian asylum seekers at the border, I was saying they cannot do this. They have to abide by the campaign promises that they made the first 100 days of immigration, like actively trying to create pathways towards amnesty. And if they don't do that, and if they cave and capitulate the right-wing framing on this issue, which I expected they were going to do, which they of course did, that the entire conversation would flip to the right and Americans would become incredibly reactionary on the issue of immigration, which happened. And in that exact time frame, I kept repeating over and over again, this is dangerous. This is very dangerous, both because this administration, the Trump administration, if they come into power, will actively seize on the right-wing white nativist sentiment and will do a cruel deportations regime. And if the liberals don't actually push back and don't counter message around this issue, Americans will be asleep. And for the first couple of months, Americans were indeed asleep. But the Kilmar Abrego situation changed that discourse. Why? Because the admin, due to one immigration attorney of the federal government and his moment of honesty, his brief moment of recognition and honesty, which he was subsequently fired over, okay, where they admitted that they had made a mistake in deporting Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland resident, to El Salvador, despite previous court orders not to deport this man to El Salvador. They made a mistake and they admitted that mistake, and that all of a sudden was a pivotal moment where people started focusing on this issue. And then Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, as I said, as I supported over and over again, actively pushed the issue and put his body on the line, flew directly down to El Salvador, and this became an even larger issue of note. It became an even more worthwhile issue. More media coverage around it, more attention being put on the Trump administration's erosion of due process, more focus around deportations and unjustifiable deportations in general. And this, in and of itself, is the reason as to why the El Salvador admin had to back away and get Chris Van Hollen, the Maryland senator, to visit Kilmar. I'm telling you right now, no, they didn't admit they were wrong. One of their lawyers did and was promptly fired for doing so. No, what do you mean? That's what I said. The administration's attorney accidentally, in a moment of honesty, admitted to a mistake. That was enough. That was the pivotal point. Do you understand? For years and years, I have been screaming from the mountaintops about Democrats doing exactly what Van Hollen should have been doing, okay? Or what Van Hollen has done. Make this an issue that people have to pay attention to. And the first moment that they seized on that opportunity, we are seeing changes occur. Do you understand? This is why I always stress the importance. This is why I always stress the importance of working with the allies we have that are in positions of power. Because Senator Chris Van Hollen is not, one of my favorite senators at all. He is not close to me ideologically at all. But he did the right thing in the right moment. He actually moved beyond platitudes. Okay? He moved beyond platitudes, and he forced people to pay attention, because when you're a senator, you have this power. You have a bully pulpit, maybe not as vast and as large and as influential as the presidential one, but you still have a soapbox that you can utilize like this, especially if you personally go out there. Now, this doesn't mean that magically the situation will improve overnight. That's not what I'm saying at all. This is not going to magically change the deportation regime. And as I have said, they are actively, the Trump administration is actively moving to disparage Manuel Kilmar Garcia, in more dramatic ways, in more ridiculous ways. But this is a pivotal moment. This is an attitude shift. Trust me when I say this. Trust me when I say this. It's just beginning. And more people within the margins are going to change their perspective on this issue. They are going to come out and speak out against this. I promise. Especially since, where is it? This very moment right here is a pivotal one, because it shows everyone that has been protesting that your anger and your protests do matter, that Democrats taking a principled stance matters. As I've said, they want to make CCOT the place where dissidents disappear without due process. We cannot let this happen. This is the first small battle in a much larger fight, okay? Asman already falling for the tattoos hard. Dude, brother, when will you understand? He is a right-wing fascism mouthpiece, okay? The fact that he doesn't personally care about right-wing bullshit does not change that dynamic. He's not falling for anything. He's just spitting out and regurgitating right-wing propaganda. That's all it is. His goal here, for his personal goals, his personal ambition is clout and relevance. Not money, but just simply relevance, okay? And he's getting quite a bit of that. He's getting a lot of love and he's getting a lot of relevance right now. The way to achieve that is by just repeating whatever the right-wing dumb want to hear. It's not about being correct. It's never about being correct. It's not about like avoiding coming across as hypocritical or anything like that. Very few people that are that invested in the right-wing project care about that. He simply cares about regurgitating right-wing propaganda because that offers him clicks, relevance, and a lot of love from an audience that wants this bottom of the barrel right-wing propaganda, while also demonstrating himself as an apolitical centrist who seemingly almost always finds himself suspiciously on the reactionary side of every issue. He's genuinely trying to capture what he thinks is some kind of reasonable... Dude, what are you talking about? There is no reasonable centrist opinion on a false deportation like this. He thinks that this is he thinks that he can present himself as a centrist who is approaching this within the boundaries of reason and claiming that he's apolitical because that's what right-wingers do. What are you talking about? Tim Pool, for years, claimed to be a liberal. What are we talking about? Even after Tim Pool straight up said Donald Trump was going to win every state in the 2020 election, he still maintained this idea, this ideal, this optics, the optics of like being apolitical or a centrist or even a liberal, as a matter of fact. I'm just a liberal. I just seemingly agree with everything that Trump is doing. Please stop. It's just marketing. Some of you fall for the marketing pretty aggressively, I think.
Abrego Garcia, no information about why he was sent to the prison.
I asked the vice president exactly that question. You know, why is he here? Is he violating any laws in El Salvador? Do you have any proof that he's committed a crime? No. Why is he here? Because the Trump administration is paying us to keep him here.
President Trump lashing out at Van Hollen's trip.
I think you're talking about Dave Rubin and not Tim Pool. No, I'm talking about Tim Pool, but Dave Rubin is another example of this. When the I'm a centrist thing, when the I'm a centrist that's simply looking at this from a reasonable position shtick dries up, when that position dries up, they inevitably swing actively to the right. They will openly recognize that they're right wing, to the surprise of nobody. Okay, but it's the same grift. I've been doing this for 10 years. Do you know how many centrists I've seen? Jordan B. Peterson. Jordan Peterson was supposed to be a centrist, a liberal, Canadian, right? What happened? Look at where he's at now. Bill Maher, supposedly the centrist liberal. These guys have always done the same thing, and people keep falling for it over and over again. It's so shocking to me.
No, look, he's a fake. I know him. I know them all. They're all fake. And they have no interest in that prisoner. That prisoner's record is unbelievably bad.
The Trump administration insists Abrego Garcia is a violent gang member.
Yeah, okay. And I'm going to tell you some of the most insane things that these guys have done, both Nayib Bukele and also the Trump administration has done so far to lie about this dude, okay? He's a first-year smart apprentice, okay? Sheet metal and transportation worker apprentice, okay? Like, this dude is a union member. He's a union brother. He has an American citizen wife and an American citizen son with special needs. And the way that they are disparaging him in an effort to justify this deportation is instructive because they want to be able to get away with swaying the public opinion at a time when there is finally some pushback. They also don't want to show that they will cave and capitulate to any kind of pushback, no matter what. Has the union made a statement on this? Yes, the union has made plenty of statements on this, of course. His union was one of the first organizations that came out with a public statement. This is the opportunity not to celebrate, but instead to push even harder, as a matter of fact, to extend the conversation to the Mahmoud Khalil situation, to extend the conversation to Mosen, to extend the conversation to Rameza Öztürk. There are so many that are also being detained right now, falsely, illegally, for a violation that the government is engaging in, an egregious violation that the government is engaging in, that is a direct violation of the First Amendment, the most important one, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. And the government knows that these guys are simply being detained and possibly deported because of what they have done, what kind of exercising of the First Amendment they've engaged in, because they want this to be a way to open the conversation, a way to erode the First Amendment protections. First, for non-citizens that are legal permanent residents, like, documented immigrants that are on a pathway towards naturalization to begin with. Then they will move to recently naturalized citizens. Then they will inevitably move to natural-born citizens. Donald Trump is actively working on a deportation scheme for homegrown American natural-born U.S. citizens. I'm telling you right now, this is where it is headed. I have not been wrong so far, so heed my warnings, okay? A lot of people are still kind of oblivious to the grand scheme here, the larger goals of this administration.
Which his family denies. He has no criminal convictions and they've provided no evidence. Van Hollen says the administration is blatantly defying the Supreme Court, which has ordered them to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release.
Senator Van Hollen says that Abrego Garcia's case is about more than just one person. He says it's about protecting the constitutional rights and due process of every person who lives in America. Janae?
All right, Selena Wang there in Washington. Thank you.
This right here was the Bukele administration's attempt where they placed these glasses with salt on the brim and a cherry to make it seem like he was sipping margaritas with Senator Van Hollen, okay? Like, that is such low effort, such bottom of the barrel clown, okay? Like, that was the first attempt. That was the first attempt to be like, see, he's having a great time. And you can see in his fake face, he's not having a great time. Like, look at him. Does this look like the face of a man who's having a great time? I mean, they bring up an old tweet. I don't think they want to go ban on past controversies law. No, don't focus on that Dan Saltman is doing, even though he is like, infinitely closer to P. Diddy than I ever have been. I don't know why he even brought that angle of attack personally, but like, the real point is, I'm using that as an analog. I'm saying that these guys are behaving like 4chan trolls. That's the point. The administration is behaving like a rabid sociopathic 4chan troll who never leaves the basement. We are literally devolving as a society. Then they moved on. They moved on from the drinks to his tattoos, or they turned around and showed a point from this conversation where Chris Van Hollen looks behind, thinking that Kilmar's wife is to his right instead of his left. They literally zoomed in on it. They zoomed in on it to be like, oh, he doesn't even know who Kilmar's wife is. Like, that was insane. Like, the shit that these guys are doing right now, is so deranged. They're trying to belittle Chris Van Hollen for the attempts and his achievement in this regard, and they're reaching for some of the most desperate shit they possibly can. Most of it is irrelevant to the point of contention, of course, but it's a way to basically engage in a war of attrition. It's very effective. No, it's not. It's only effective if you find yourself duped by any number of different things and you don't focus up on the main problem. And the media, luckily, has not caved into this, okay? The media hasn't thus far given into this. One thing that they also did was bring up the domestic civil, the domestic issues that Kilmar and his wife had, right? Immediately, they were like, see, he's a wife beater. He's a wife beater. It's like, bro, his wife is literally prominently on stage every day demanding his return. That doesn't make you question the things that you're going along. That doesn't make you question the things that you're presenting as like a reason to keep him in fucking El Salvador. Not only did she file for a temporary restraining order, she never actually fulfilled the restraining order in any way. She never actually fulfilled the restraining order at all. She also had to give quotes to Newsweek about this, where she had to be like, "Listen, wait, I was really worried and you know, I guess quote unquote jumped the gun when I filed for this out of caution because of my previous relationship that was abusive, and we worked through our problems, and I never actually filed I never actually went along with the restraining order in general. We went to marriage counseling, and we're in a loving relationship where I want my husband to come back to the United States of America." So, the idea that this is enough or enough justification for deportation is silly on its face, but it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter at all. They're just desperately grabbing onto anything and everything they can do. I'll give you another analog. It's like when the ADL recognizes that they have lost the battle, the propaganda battle. The ADL does not have any power here, any influence here in swaying public opinion because of Israel's atrocities. What do? They turn around and focus their attention and their priorities on increasingly smaller targets. After October 7, Bill Ackman was doxing Harvard students for writing in the Harvard newspaper identical pieces to the Haaretz editorial board that said October 7 is still directly the responsibility of Israel, which is true. It's a correct statement. And a bunch of Harvard students got doxxed for that. And Bill A. Ackman was running around demanding flesh. Okay. A year into Israel's genocide, the public opinion has changed dramatically against Israel. And what are they doing now? They're going after like the Weather Channel for having a advertisement where one of the models is wearing a keffiyeh. So like the targets change and they get increasingly pettier, increasingly more petty, and increasingly less consequential targets overall. But it's an act of desperation. Okay, this comes from the desperation that they recognize because they're losing. They're losing on the public front. People are starting to recognize what's going on. Just grasping at straws. They're just trying to grab onto anything and everything they can.
So here's what happened. When I first sat down with Kilmar, we just had glasses of water on the table. I think maybe some coffee. And as we were talking, one of the government people came over and deposited 2 other glasses on the table with ice, and I don't know if it was salt or sugar around the top, but they look like margaritas. And if you look at the one they put in front of Kilmar, it actually had a little less liquid than the one in front of me, to try to make it look, I assume, like he drank out of it. Let me just be very clear. Neither of us touched the drinks that were in front of us. And if you want to play a little Sherlock Holmes, I'll tell you how you can know that. So if you look at the video or the picture I sent out from the beginning of our meeting, you'll see there are no glasses on the table. So you'll see in later videos they are on the table. But they made a little mistake. For some people are very careful, right?
This is bad Hasbara, exactly. They're doing Israel. That's what they're doing. It reminds me of a desperate but violent state that is actively trying to do anything and everything they can to disparage the people that they are torturing, okay? And those who demand an end to said torture.
If you sip out of one of those glasses, some of whatever it was, salt or sugar.
Additionally ironic because Nayib Bukele is Palestinian, by the way. I hate to recognize that and I hate to admit that, but he is, he is probably the worst Palestinian on the planet, but
would disappear. You would see a gap.
Yeah, people don't know that Nayib Bukele is literally Palestinian.
Nobody drank any margaritas or sugar water or whatever it is. But this is a lesson into the lengths that President Bukele will do to deceive people about what's going on. And it's also shows the lengths that the Trump administration and the president will go to, because when he was asked about a reporter about this, he just went along for the ride. So the White House and the president had been lying about this case from the beginning, from the Supreme Court to the...
Look at this. Hey, Chris Van Hollen, I went ahead and changed your office plaque for you. Chris Van Hollen, senator from El Salvador. Oh my God, they're so stupid. That's the other thing. They're doing like a bunch of AI art to be like, oh, he wants to kiss and make out. He wants to make out with the MS-13 gang member. He wants to have gay with the MS-13 gang member. LOL. And these are like 65-year-old, 75-year-old adults, okay? No self-respect, no decency whatsoever.